Welcome to the OC24 podcast, where we've taken some of the best talks and discussions from this year's 24-hour conference on global organised crime, which showcases some of the most interesting research into organised crime around the world. This episode is called Cars, Gold and Territories, Trends of Organised Crime in Brazil.
Welcome everyone. We are now in the session 7B of the 24-hour conference on the global organized crime. This is the session where we will discuss cars, golds, and territories, trends of organized crime in Brazil. We have 4 presentators tonight, or today, depending on the time zone in which you are watching this. So we have Ana Carolina Bragança, Carolina Grillo, Janaina Maldonado, and Gabriel Feltran. They are all young Brazilian researchers who will present cutting-edge research on from environmental crimes to illegal cars markets, and then wrapping it all up with a discussion on the trends that this new research shows us. So we'll go directly to Ana Carolina Bragança, who will discuss environmental organized crime in the Amazon region. You have 10 minutes. Thank you very much, Anna.
Thank you, Luiz. Thank you a lot for inviting me and having me, giving me the opportunity to share a little bit of my experience as a federal prosecutor and also as a researcher in the environmental area. Well, for many years in Brazil, environmental criminality was considered unimportant since it dealt with allegedly minor crimes. That was actually never the case in the Amazon, where deforestation, illegal logging, illegal gold mining, and wildlife trafficking have always dwelt on complex criminal organizations. However, only recently the legal discourse recognized broadly the possibility of environmental crimes being committed in the context of organized crime. The widespread destruction of the Amazon shed light into the criminal phenomena taking place in the region and called lawyers, prosecutors, judges, environmental governmental agencies, researchers, NGOs, and so on, to take action to understand what was going on and to develop appropriate responses. This process of construction of knowledge is still ongoing, but some features can already be identified. And I want to build on 3 of these features during this exposition in order to offer you an overall idea on environmental organized crime in the Amazon. Could we please go to my first slide, the next one, Thank you a lot. So first, environmental crimes in the Amazon aim at illegally exploiting natural resources such as timber, gold, wildlife, land. These crimes cannot take place effectively unless they are attached to another types of crimes which allow either the exploitation to occur or the exploited natural resources to be sold or used in legal markets. Land grabbing, for instance, usually precedes deforestation. After taking possession of public lands, squatters can more easily cut the forest and implement pasture. At the same time, to cover their crimes, squatters will usually use middlemen and fraud documents concerning the possession of the land. If you try to identify in public systems the holder of the land, for instance, you will not find the squatter, but the middleman. And it's not unusual to see corruption contributing to this process, with public servants inserting imprecise data in public systems to camouflage the squatter's identity. A big farm can be fraudulently divided into lots of smaller farms, all registered in middlemen's names, since legalizing small properties is easier, and the holders can be exempt from in-person inspections. That's one technique for allowing land grabbing to generate legal property titles, concealing the initial invasion of public lands and the environmental crimes committed thereafter. And I tried to kind of show this process using that slide, but I must say that I'm a lawyer, not a designer, so I'm not very good with slide designing. I hope it is clearly clear enough, but you can see the idea is that you can see this process ongoing through the slide. Could we go to the next slide, please? So the second feature I would like to mention concerns the gravity center of environmental crimes in the Amazon, which is the introduction of the exploited natural resources in the formal economy. So most exploited natural resources do not stay in the Amazon. They are addressed actually to huge markets, including South Brazil, but also Europe, the US, and East Asia. But let me be very clear, these products do not get to these places as illegal products. When they arrive either in southern Brazil or in Europe, for instance, they look pretty much legal. The main mechanisms whereby the transformation of illegal natural resources into legal natural resources takes place are quite similar across different types of environmental crimes. Basically, right after the illegal extraction, fraudulent documents entail the incorporation of gold timber, lands, even some types of wildlife into legal markets. An illegal gold miner, for instance, will sell his gold to a financial institution authorized to buy gold, formally declaring that the mineral comes from a legal source. As there are not stringent supply chain controls regarding gold, the declaration is assumed to be true even if there is not an evidence of the real gold origin, and that amount of gold coming from an illegal source will be considered legal thereafter. If later this gold is exported and we want to know if the exporter knew about the illegal origin, we will need to prove somehow that he was aware of the fraudulent mechanisms taking place right in the beginning of the supply chain. Could we go to the next slide, please? And this same kind of process goes also for timber. Timber is exploited illegally and immediately disguised as legal, for instance, through frauds concerning the amount of wood that a certain authorized project is entitled to cut. Imagine you want to legally exploit timber. You must present to the environmental agency an assessment of how much timber is available in the area you're going to work on. Based on the available amount of timber, the environmental agency emits permits entitling the entrepreneur to exploit and commercialize a certain amount of environmental resources. If you overestimate the amount of timber in an area, and either you trick or corrupt the environmental agency, you receive extra entitlements that you can use to cover illegal timber. Usually that happens right in the beginning of the supply chain. And just as for gold, if you want to prove that an exporter is aware of the illegal origins, you need to prove that he knew about the frauds that were going on when the timber reached the legal market. These two examples lead to a conclusion that has been directing the efforts of the prosecution service in Brazil. The money coming from illegal gold or illegal timber exploitation is laundered in the beginning of the supply chain by means of mixing the illegal products with legal ones in the context of the same economic activity. You do not use, for example, a laundry to wash illegal timber money, for example. You use a legal sawmill to do so. And this implies that previously to money laundering, the natural resources are themselves laundered, and their environmental crimes differ a lot from the other kinds of crime. Brazilian law admits as money laundering the laundering of any product of a crime, not only money. Then we have been charging criminals for the laundering of gold, timber, and even lands, and up to now, all of our accusations were admitted, and we had at least one condemnation on timber laundering. Finally, as a development of the second feature, and we can go to the next slide, I would like to mention on the idea of following the money as a method for investigation, that if you want to know if an actor further on in the supply chain contributed to environmental crimes, you cannot establish so looking solely the money flow, unless the actor sends money directly to the illegal actors, such as gold miners, and you see that there in the second arrow. That is not what usually happens, though. Usually exporters will send money to the sawmill, for example, who received and loaded the timber, or to the financial institution who bought the illegal gold. Both these enterprises operate transforming the natural resources from illegal to legal, but they do so on their own. Consequently, you need additional evidence demonstrating that exporter was aware that his commercial partner was incurring in frauds. Analyzing the money path can contribute to that, but usually it will be not enough to establish the participation of the exporter in the crimes. To sum up, investigating and prosecuting environmental crimes in the context of organized crime in the Amazon is not obvious, particularly if you want to build strategies that can effectively lead to condemnations. The burden of proof is on us, investigators and prosecutors, and presumptions will not hold in courts. So we need to be better than that, and to do so, we need to take into account the features that I mentioned. Remarkably, we need to understand how crimes are designed in the particular Amazonian context, and to know that not every usual investigation method applied elsewhere will work here. Adaptations will be required, and strategic thinking is the key for reaching optimal results, and that's where we opt to aim at. These are my initial comments. I thank you a lot, and I'm just eager to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you very, very much, Anna, especially for the very complete presentation in such a short time. And thank you also for committing yourself to the 10 minutes time limit. And so we will go straight to the presentation by Carolina Grillo, who will present some research on territorial disputes between criminal groups in the city of Rio de Janeiro.
Hi, everyone. I hope you're listening. Well, thank you for the opportunity of being here. I'll present here today an overall view of a research study conducted by GI, which is the Grupo de Estudos dos Novos Ilegalismos from Fluminense Federal University, together with Observatório das Metrópoles from the Federal University of Rio de Janeiro. The research is called The Expansion of Milícias in Rio de Janeiro, Political and Economic Advantages. Our study addresses the political and economic basis of the so-called milícias in the city of Rio de Janeiro and the effects of government regulation of legal and illegal markets on their expansion. The period under study was between the year of 2007 and 2020, of remarkable expansion of milícias. In the last couple of years, the armed power of the so-called milícias over territories, populations, and markets have expanded in the city of Rio de Janeiro. Since the 1980s, the crime issue in Rio had focused the territorial disputes between well-armed drug factions, the facções or comandos, like Comando Vermelho, Terceiro Comando Puro, and Amigos dos Amigos, and their clashes with the police. But lately, the phenomena of racketeering milícias seem to have grown in importance. According to the map of armed groups in Rio de Janeiro, in 2019, milícias controlled almost 60% of the territories under armed groups' dominion. This map was elaborated by GI together with Fogo Cruzado, Disque Denúncia, Núcleo de Estudos da Violência from University of São Paulo, and Pista News. In the early mid-2000s, milícias were praised by several public authorities as a novel community policing model to be replicated in squatter settlement called favelas, and poor neighborhoods also, that were under control of armed groups of drug traffickers. Although known to be criminal groups involved in extortion, protection rackets, and death squads, militias were praised by local press as a viable and less violent alternative to the territorial control exerted by drug factions. However, this image was left aside after the kidnapping and torture of a team of reporters from the daily newspaper O Dia by militia members in 2008. This episode caused a significant turning point in press coverage on the theme and provided the opportunity for installing a legislative investigation committee called CPI das Milícias in the Rio de Janeiro State Legislature Assembly, called ALERJ, to inquire on the participation of state legislators in militias. The so-called CPI das Milícias had been solicited in 2007 by the former state legislator Marcelo Freixo, but was formed only after the reporters were kidnapped and tortured. Thereafter, the participation of law enforcement officers and local politicians in militias became widely known and their rackets unveiled. These armed criminal groups illegally control and extort the essential services market in poor neighborhoods, such as the supply of water, electric energy, cooking gas, and cable TV, public transport, security, and as I'll demonstrate, housing as well. It is now widespread known that militias exercise their control over territories, markets, and populations through coercive practice like threats, beating, torture, and murder. It is also known that militias violently dispute territories among themselves and against drug factions, and that they profit from drug sales as well. The peculiarity of militias is mainly the participation of government officials from both civil and military police agencies, elected representatives, municipal guards, military firefighters, etc., as board and staff members, and that hardly ever happens in drug factions. This ambiguous relation between militias and government favors the ability of these racketeering groups to increase and spread their influence, occupying vast territories and electing representatives of their choosing for important political offices in all public spheres like the municipality, the state, and even federal government. To access the political and economic basis of militia expansion, this study was based on the map of criminal armed groups in Rio de Janeiro, as I've spoken before, and used as key variables, 1, police raids, and 2, real estate activity. Our research results indicate that in comparison to other criminal groups from Rio de Janeiro, militias were subject to reduced police repression, and the territories they control show an increased real estate activity. The data produced sustain our hypothesis that the targeting of use of force by state government and the regulation and inspection of real estate markets have favored the expansion of militias. Based on the map of armed groups, we proceeded to the georeference of information from the other 2 databases. 1, the police rates databases from GI, from Fluminense Federal University, my research group. And 2, the data on unitary real estate permits. And 3, location of housing projects from Minha Casa Minha Vida federal housing program. And 4, the legalized real estate units. The objectives were to verify how the distribution of police raids among territories controlled by each of the known criminal armed groups that operate in Rio de Janeiro, and to verify the relation between the intensity of real estate activity at city districts and the type of predominant armed groups in each district. In order to access militias' political advantage, we chose police raids as an indicator because Rio de Janeiro police strategy for controlling crime has been based on the routinization of police special operations aimed at seizing drugs, arms, and killing or arresting crime suspects in favelas and poor neighborhoods. Armed with assault rifles and on board of armored vehicles, including helicopters, police officers engage in unpredictable urban battles against armed criminals who often resist police offensives. The sudden shootouts that result from police raids in favelas disrupt the dwellers' routines by exposing them to the crossfire. The centrality of police raids for the control of crime in Rio de Janeiro collaborates for the exorbitant records of death due to police action. in Rio de Janeiro. According to official data, only in 2019, 1,814 people were killed by police officers on duty in the state of Rio de Janeiro. In territories controlled by militias, despite the various collected accounts of extortion and violence, dwellers describe their neighborhoods as tranquilo, as peaceful, quiet. However, official homicide statistics indicate that neighborhoods known to be controlled by militias, like Santa Cruz and Campo Grande, are the most violent in the city of Rio de Janeiro. Our hypothesis for interpreting the perception of tranquility, regardless of the high homicide rates, is that it alludes to the low incidence of armed clashes with the police. The comparison between the GNI-UF police rates database and the map of armed criminal groups allows us to have a better measure of the unequal distribution of police force among territories controlled by different criminal groups. Our data show the neighborhoods with disputed territories represent 35.1% of total neighborhoods and concentrate 45.5% of police rates. Comando Vermelho is the predominant group in 26.4% of neighborhoods, but 41% of police raids were conducted in Comando Vermelho areas. However, militias are the predominant groups in almost 30% of neighborhoods, in which only 6.5% of police raids happen. In summary, frequency of police raids is higher in territories controlled by drug factions, particularly Comando Vermelho, and lower in territories controlled by militias. Hence, the data produced allow us to conclude that militias are groups in political advantage and that Comando Vermelho is the main group in political disadvantage. In order to access militias' economical advantages, we analyzed official data concerning real estate markets from Rio de Janeiro City Secretariat of Urbanism, SMU, I'll be calling, okay? From the SMU database, where all types of real estate permits and legalization processes are registered. Rio de Janeiro City government also maintains lenient laws intended for facilitating the legalization of irregular constructions, thus to estimate the spatial distribution of both legal and illegal real estate activities. We use the SMU data on granted unitary permits for commercial and residential edification and land subdivision in data on legalization applications approved. We observed that districts where the number of permits granted was higher were precisely the districts where large territorial portions are under control of militias, as Campo Grande and Jacarepaguá. In the analyzed period, local government defined Campo Grande, Santa Cruz, and Guaratiba as assisted areas for subsidized housing construction. Therefore, concentrating most of Minha Casa Minha Vida subsidized housing project for low-income families in areas controlled by militias. We also identified significant superposition between militias and Minha Casa Minha Vida condos, suggesting that militias are taking advantage of the subsidized housing program in order to expand their rackets. More than just charging security fees, the Minha Casa Minha Vida program provided militias with new sources of income from the booming real estate markets that often unfold from housing social policies. Militias collect distorted administration taxes of 10 to 50% over apartment sales and rents. Many apartments become property of militias members through expulsion and or murder of legitimate owners. Essential urban services like water, electric energy, cable TV, internet, and kitchen gas are overtaxed and or monopolized by enterprises associated with militias. In the common areas of the condos, militias build small houses and shops for rental, illegally privatizing them. The spurious interaction between state power and or public policies with militias racketeering groups is even more evident in the market of irregular constructions. We have considered the data on approved applications of legalization of construction of constructions as a proxy of illegal real estate activity because it refers to subdivisions and edifications conducted irregularly that were later legalized, benefiting from the above mentioned, the previously mentioned land and real estate laws. We also identified a superposition of...
conclude?
Okay, I'm concluding.
Okay.
We also identified a superposition of militia presence in districts with higher number of legalized units, again, emphasizing that districts of Campo Grande and Jacarepaguá. Our data indicate that legal mechanisms offered by a local government for legalizing regular constructions have been used by militias for expanding their real estate market activities. To conclude this presentation, I may state that our data sustain the research hypothesis that militias have benefited from a double advantage, political and economic, over the rival criminal factions. On one side, the low incidence of police raids in the neighborhoods they control. On the other side, the increase of profits from real estate activity obtained from occupying public lands, offering protection to illegal construction, and mediating real estate transactions in neighborhoods that show intense real estate activity. Thank you very much, and sorry about the time.
Well, thank you very much, Carolina. Sorry for interrupting your presentation, but I'm sure we will have plenty of time to discuss it later. And I'll have some questions for you. And so we'll go straight to Janaina, who will present the latest findings on the ongoing research on clandestine markets of illicit vehicles. It will be very interesting. Thank you very much, Janaina.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me, and really nice to be here around really good and nice colleagues. And also thanks for the audience that is watching us right now and to the organization. I will share my screen now. Here it goes. You can see it? Full screen?
Yes.
Yes. So, first slide, yes. So I will present an overview of our collective research that has been conducted by a group of 11 Brazilian ethnographers, coordinated by Gabriel Feltran, that's also here, over the past few years. And second, I will focus on an experience of state regulation of an illegal market. So to start, I would like to explain a bit why researching stolen cars. So the stolen car market, unlike the illegal drugs and weapons market, is a quantifiable circuit, especially through the massive production of data by insurance companies. And at the same time, we found a number of stories in our distinct ethnographies in which the car was central to understanding situations of violence and the circulation of money and goods. And also, as you can see in this table, the dimension of the stolen cars in Brazil, and especially in São Paulo. So methodologically, I think it's very, very interesting for me how we decided to do this research. We reconstructed the journeys of 5 stolen cars by the tradition of following objects. And we began to question what are the techniques used in armed robberies and thefts, and who are their victims and who are the thieves, what are their stories and what are the situations in which they happen. Once a car is stolen, what happens to it? We follow 2 of the responses to this criminal activity, the response of the state through police action. So in the last few years, for example, the São Paulo police killed 2 people a day. 60% of these homicides had a stolen car at the crime scene. Also, the response to the insurance companies with the massive expansion of car insurance and their political influence. So we reconstructed these journeys through a collection of ethnographic scenes and secondary data collected between 2017 and 2019 in São Paulo, but also in cities like Berlin, London, and Paris, and as well as on the Brazilian borders with Paraguay and Bolivia. And we talked to insurance companies, thieves in different positions in the criminal world, people who have had cars stolen, auctioneers, police officers, politicians, and so on. So we came across 5 priority destinations that these cars assume after being stolen. First, the dismantling stores for later sale of their parts. Second, the national borders for exchange for cocaine-based paste that supplies the internal Brazilian market and also the international market in the big European cities. Third, car auctions, insurance companies, and the streets of favelas for private use. Alternatively, the stolen car is also used to commit other crimes. So for all these places and people, we asked, among other 2 questions: how does it work and how much does it cost? That was the 2 questions that guided us in our research. So the moment the car is stolen, different actors started to make money. In distribution, its distribution, however, is unequal. More than this, the distribution of violence that runs through this market is also unequal and inversely proportional to the money that circulates. So more risk, more violence, less money. Less risk, no exposure to violence, more money. And theoretically, for us, we radically assume the perspective that in the city of São Paulo, not only the state produces order, but different actors claim for the regulation of our urban spaces, coexisting, co-producing, and clashing in the daily life of our cities. Central among them are for us the world of crime, the world of state practices, and with it, the increasingly autonomous police forces, and the world of the churches, especially the Pentecostal churches. These different regimes, what we call normative regimes, are different regimes of action with different grammars of interpretation of the social world that coexist in a plural order in which subjects occupy different positions in words that are also distinct. So through this framework, we look at the production of inequality and violence inscribed in the stolen car circuit and its transnational connections. And then I would like to focus on one of the axes of this research, the state regulation of illegal market, which I worked closely. Oh, it's a mistake here, I'm sorry. I don't know why I got so small, but okay. So I would like to focus on the state regulation of illegal market, which I worked closely with 2 colleagues, Luana Mota and Juliana Alcântara, more specifically in the regulation of one of the most important destinations of stolen cars in São Paulo, that is the dismantling stores and the sale of used parts. So vehicle theft and armed robbery have increased its image as a public problem in Brazil since 2003. In addition, one of the most profitable destinations for stolen cars, the dismantling stores, has become central to the discussion. Dismantling stores are spaces historically considered linked to illegality. However, was after 2003 for at least 10 years that the dispute for the regulation of this market becomes more intense. The logic was simple. By preventing or regulating the auto parts sales chain, theft and armed robbery intended to supply this market would no longer be profitable. 2 options for the regulation were presented with the official goal of curbing vehicle theft and robbery in São Paulo. First, the incineration of stolen cars recovered by the police or insurance companies that would interrupt the commercial circuit. And second, the regulation of this activity of dismantling a car and selling these auto parts through bureaucratic procedures. The first option of the incineration was not successful because different actors recognized the car dismantling as a highly profitable market. A car, just to give an example, after being dismantled, can maximize its value by up to 5 times. So after the disputes between different sectors, auctioneers, insurance companies, owners of dismantling stores, politicians linked to the insurance market, and also to the police sectors, the differences between them were accommodated. And in 2014, the law that would regulate the trade of illegal auto parts was passed, the so-called dismantling law. The everyday experience of the law that we have observed ethnographically allows us to discuss both the regulation of illegal markets, an important topic that remains understudied, and the unintended political effects of market regulation. The term regulation, as we use it here, is not simply imposed by the state from the top down. Rather, it constitutes a play between the rules of the state and how different normative regimes respond to those rules. Regulation arises out of everyday power conflicts and interactions between ordinary people and specialized actors in economic activities, laws, bureaucratic structures, the state, religious activities, and criminal activities, among others. With this in mind and heading towards the end, two things are important. It's not enough for a law to be passed for it to have any practical effect. There needs to be a confluence of actors and regulatory instruments. The 2014 law had both. One technological device was key to its implementation. That was the tracking labels that you can see in the picture. Each label of this made of destructible white vinyl bears a QR code that anyone with a cell phone reader can scan to learn the origin of the auto part. So this goes in each part of the car that will be put in the market. So moreover, laws and police do not necessarily serve to disrupt criminal circuits, as we see with this research, but they serve more to regulate and manage illegalities. What we saw was not the end of vehicle theft in São Paulo, despite its significant drop that still needs to be understood, but the reproduction of stratification and exclusion in a now legalized market. The labels brought the appearance of legality to this market. The bureaucratic procedures did not allow everyone who operated in the sector to be legalized, but only a few who possessed economic and technical capital. One of the legal requirements, for example, to operate in this market is not to have criminal record. Legal and illegal, therefore, which were no longer binary poles, now have their scales rearranged. Those who do not fit in now operate illegally. Others operate on a legalized facade that takes advantage of gaps in regulatory procedures. So these labels are placed on some cars, registered on others, duplicated, counterfeited. Moreover, they operate as a technopolitical device, a technology designed to operate political goals and which operates by neutralizing politics to a facade of technicality. Other establishments operate also in a completely legal way. All of them, however, and that's what is really also interesting for us, all of them, however, tell us that one actor has strengthened in this process, not the police, but the police officer, those who operate the daily supervision and fiscalization of these establishments have begun to control the exchange of protection, and within the continuum between legal and illegal, all of them pay the police officer to operate in peace. So violence, therefore, also in this market is reorganized. If there is regulation, those who don't fit in are because they don't want to. So the punishment can be more severe. However, a certain aesthetic reorganizes the violence and the boundaries between legal and illegal in this market. Labels, the location of the establishment, cleanliness, and for example, if they have one label, a lot of parts in the entrance with a lot of labels, the police officers say, oh, it's all right, okay. And all of these reproduce through legal procedures that are not neutral at all. They are already durable inequalities, to quote Charles Tilly, that run throughout our cities. I think what I wanted to say is more that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Janaina. And so to conclude this first round of presentations, I would like to invite Gabriel Feltran to present his findings on his latest research, and also if he could debate the links between the specific markets, illicit markets that were presented now, and the other forms of organized crime that we have discussed in Brazil. Thank you very much, Gabriel.
Thanks, Luiz, for the invitation. Pleasure to be here with you and colleagues. And my presentation is a kind of continuation of Janaina's presentation, because we worked together in this big project about legal, illegal markets, or legal, illegal borders of vehicle markets in Brazil. And now it became a bit international. So we are starting the following project on vehicle circulation, informal vehicle circulation around the world. And in this specific presentation, I'm gonna present a kind of border between vehicle and cocaine markets in Brazil, and how it turns into a lot of money, a lot of global money. So the first part of my presentation is quite ethnographic, telling stories of field work, and second part is more analytical stuff, okay? So our research question to this whole project was, how are São Paulo's inequalities and violence being reproduced within transnational illegal market chains, okay? And we've been doing field work for a long time in São Paulo's urban outskirts. But for this specific project, we've been studying journeys of vehicles, people, families, organizations from 2015 until today. And we are trying to compare both locally and internationally. As I don't have much time, I'm gonna start this story with Samuel. Samuel is a guy who I met in 2005 when he was 7 years old. Samuel is someone who stole a car when he had 18 years old, and I was still doing field work with his family. Okay, Samuel is Ivette's grandson, and Ivette is someone who I've been following. And Janaina also knows very well in the whole family story is being studied for us for a long time. Ivette had 8 sons. 4 of them decided to be part of the criminal world, and Samuel is a son of a worker, not of a criminal in this family. But Samuel in 2016 told me about a crime he made with some colleagues, and I found a YouTube video that is exactly the same story, the same type of crime he described it to me. He did in this 2016. After stealing a car, they will also steal. They will also pick and take those things. You see, personal stuff, cell phones, and wallet, and etc. Because normally they earn much more money with this small stuff than with the car, because they are hired to steal this car. Okay, so in 40 seconds, Samuel earned what he earns in a month working as a very low skilled worker in São Paulo, and the same as the equivalent of a minimum salary, a minimum wage in São Paulo. Okay, he goes to the shopping mall after the theft with $250 in his pocket, and he buys global brands, okay? Oakley, Subway, McDonald's for him and for his friends. So the illegal money he had in his pocket becomes legal money. And as we pay a lot of taxes in Brazil in consumption, he is also paying taxes, okay? When the illegal money comes to legal markets by consumption. The Toyota Haliuc, Samuel was told, is recovered by the insurance companies, half part of the
sorry to interrupt you again, Gabriel. I think we're not seeing your presentation. When you put full screen, we don't see it. If you not put it full screen, we can see. So maybe you should just leave it without putting full screen.
Okay. So the Haliuc is recovered by the insurance company, okay? And when it's recovered, it is part of the calculations of the insurance company. So for a single indemnization paid by insurance company, they earn 100 premium insurance sold, okay? So the insurance company earns more or less $200,000 for each indemnization they pay. Normally, because they sell the Toyota Haliuc or the cars they recover in auctions, and the auctioneer earns 5% of the price. Okay, so the auctioneer earns 10 times more than Samuel. And during our research, one of those auctioneers became senator of the Republic in the same year that Samuel was being shot by the police. Okay. With the stolen Haliuc, he earns 10 times more than Samuel. He became senator of the Republic, not from his state, but from a state in the north of the country, because he was a substitute, someone who could replace a senator in a moment he needs, okay? So he paid for this, he had no vote, and he became a senator of the Republic. Samuel has exactly the profile of the victims of homicide in Brazil. He is a man, he's black, he is a young guy, and he is a young, unskilled operator of transnational illegal economies as the vehicle economies and the drug economies, but he lives in a favela. The prison inmates have exactly the same profile as Samuel. What could we see when we go a bit further and follow this Toyota Haliuc out of São Paulo, okay? As Janaina told us, we have different destinations for those stolen cars, but in this case, we reconstructed the journey of a Toyota Haliuc that came to the border, to the Bolivian border with Brazil, and there it is exchanged by 5 kilos of cocaine hydrochloride. Cocaine hydrochloride is the cocaine for exportation. It's not for internal markets, it's for exportation. It is transported back to São Paulo and to ports and airports in Brazil normally. And they use truck drivers, legal and companies, legal truck drivers to do these transportations. Look at this. When they use only cash to make this negotiation, to buy drugs in the border, they could have 500% of increase of price increase, 500% of price increase if they use cash. But when they use a stolen car as currency, it will be 3 times more, okay? So that's why car theft and cocaine trade are so intertwined, and that's why they are in last 5, 6, 7 years, why it became a very big business in global markets, okay? So cocaine made it possible And the accumulation that comes from cocaine is feeding a lot of different markets in Brazil, as for example, as the gold markets or the mining markets or timber markets that Ana Carolina was presenting to us. And of course, it's feeding also the militia expansion in Rio, as Carolina was telling us. So when we were doing field work in Berlin for this research, we realized that there's a lot of Brazilian cocaine there. But Brazilian cocaine there is a bit more expensive, because 1 gram of cocaine in this Görlitzer Park was being sold by $115. It means that 1 Haliuc stolen by Samuel in Brazil put 5 kilos of cocaine, for example, in Berlin, and it means $475,000. Not $60,000, but for almost $600,000. I mean, 10 times more. Okay.
Gabriel, do you mind wrapping up?
Sorry.
The first session. Do you mind wrapping up? You were.
Yeah. That's the final slide. Okay. So Samuel had got 250, the auctioneer 3,000, the insurance company almost 200,000, the international wholesale dealers more than $100,000, and $400,000 for the German dealers. That's why the German police is being part of this. The German police, we had news from recent days telling us about this. So what we are trying to tell is that legal and illegal stuff are completely entangled, but also that local and marginal markets are also feeding global accumulation, both legally and illegally. Thanks very much for hearing us. Sorry for the technical problems. Those paintings are from a Brazilian artist called Éder Oliveira, and those are the books and special issues we've been producing last years, and this is my contact. And thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Gabriel. And I'm sure we will have additional time to discuss, and maybe you can just show your videos in a later stage in this presentation. Well, we have 15 minutes for our discussion. We will take questions from the audience from the Q&A session in the program. And we can also take questions from anyone who desires to do so. Just send us a message. And to start the discussion, I would just like to ask 2 questions to begin, one to Ana Carolina and other to Carolina. And to Ana Carolina, she just presented a very interesting description of how the environmental crime works and the differences between them and the other more famous, as I could say, illegal markets here. And but I would like to ask her if she could detail how the connections between the illegal markets in the environmental crimes and the public power, not just the specific structures on controlling the environmental crimes, just as the IBAMA in Brazil, but I mean more political officers like local politicians and state authorities, and especially now even the federal government presents almost declared tolerance on environmental crimes in the Amazon region. And I'd like her to, if you could give us a glimpse on the relation between the state's tolerance and in a more higher political level and the environmental crimes. And to Carolina, I would also like you to tell the audience on the experiences with the Supreme Court mandated ban on police operations that were put on place in the pandemics. And I think you should, maybe if you, in a minute or two, to tell how it worked and how effective it was, and it is in the last weeks and months. And after that, I will just come back with another questions for Janaina and Gabriel, and also to provide you with questions from the audience.
Thank you, Luiz. I believe I should begin. The first question was addressed to me. So, well, on politicians and environmental crimes and organized crime as a whole, what I want to mention is that historically, most of these environmental crimes were not considered by local populations as crimes. So if you take if you ask, for example, in rural areas in the Amazon, if illegal gold mining is a crime, no one will tell you so, because people do not consider this kind of crimes, serious crimes, to be addressed by law. And actually, these activities, illegal gold mining and illegal logging, land grabbing and deforestation, they are quite intertwined with economic activities in these rural areas. So many cities are captured by crime in the sense that they have their economies depending on those chains of timber or of gold or of deforestation and land grabbing. And this this goes further into making local politicians also connected to these activities. And this is something that begins at the local sphere, but then it keeps going into regional powers, for example, state deputies, governors, many of them actually do incentivize, we could say that, these activities, or at least are act in omission, not addressing them as they should. And what I see in the federal government in the last few years is that these local and regional powers have finally reached or found their voices in the federal arena. So these voices, which were not heard in the past, now they are being heard in our parliament. And they are, for example, conducing the debate on the legalization of gold mining in indigenous lands, for example, or on how should we legalize or not areas which have been invaded, public lands that have been invaded by criminals. What I see is basically that these economies which are captured in a way by crime, they have found an opportunity to be heard in the current political moment in Brazil.
Thank you very much. And Carolina, could you address the question?
Okay, of course. I would like to thank you for the question. It's a pleasure to talk about the ADPF. In fact, first, I would have to explain what it is. It's an allegation of non-compliance with the fundamental precept, which we call a DPF 635, or also called the ADPF das favelas. Well, the human rights violations perpetrated by the state of Rio de Janeiro during police raids in favelas and poor neighborhoods have been the object of this ADPF 635 at the Brazilian Supreme Court. It was filed by the Brazilian Socialist Party, the PSB, in November 2019. But the judicial process has counted with support from the Rio de Janeiro State Public Defender's Office, several human rights NGOs, and several social movements, especially movements from victims' relatives from police violence and favelas movements. And the Grupo de Estudos dos Novos Ilegalismos, GI from Fluminense Federal University, has collaborated with the instruction of the process by elaborating research reports evaluating the impacts of police raids. And we have found some striking results concerning the police raids in favelas because, well, the problem had already been posed by several social movements over the last decades because the dwellers' routines often disrupted and the health services are forced to close and dwellers are among stray bullets lying on the floor to protect themselves, and children are often killed. We already knew that, but during the ADPF, there was the pandemics, and a child was killed, João Pedro, inside the house in a moment when children were not allowed to go to school because of the pandemics. So some cautions that had been protocoled by in the ADPF, soliciting some security measures, like, I don't know how to say that in English, medida cautelar, some caution measures. And it was conceded by the Supreme Court, caution measure, suspending police raids during the pandemics. So it was not a suspension. The police raids were only restricted to exceptional situations. And since we had already a database on police raids, we contributed by producing data on the conduction of operations and the obedience or the compliance or non-compliance to the judicial decision that restricted police raids. So we found out that in the first 4 months of the restriction, the police raids reduced. In fact, indeed, and hundreds of people were not killed. There was a decrease in deaths due to police action. But later, the Supreme Court decision was disrespected by the local government, and the killings just went on, and police raids have been conducted as if there were no Supreme Court decision. And lately we had several massacres in Rio, like for instance, the Jacarezinho Chacina, the massacre in Jacarezinho with 28 people killed during a police action. And last week, 8 people were killed in São Gonçalo in another police raid conducted as a vendetta for the death of police officers. And what's been asked in the ADPF is just that the police abides to some protocols that they have elaborated, and to abide to some other protocols, some obvious things like not shooting from an helicopter in a very densely populated site, or like not using schools and health facilities as a base for military action. So, or for instance, bringing together an ambulance, since there are so often people are killed or injured during these police raids. So this process is still on trial, and there will be a new phase of the trial tomorrow. And it's very important to keep the pressure. So, because this is a very, very important case for the protection of human rights in Rio de Janeiro and for the reduction of deaths due to police action.
Thank you very much, Carolina. We have like 5 minutes left, and I have 10 things to ask to Janaina and Gabriel, so I'll just keep it short and ask you to keep short as well. So, but we'll just be cut off from the transmission, so there's no time for us to go further. So I'd like to ask Janaina about this huge increase of value that you showed between the regular car and the dismantled car. It's something very impressive that you described. I'd like to, if you could just describe it a little more for us. And to Gabriel, all other very impressive increase in value is when you just showed the value of a kilo or a gram of cocaine in the border on Brazil and Bolivia, and how it will be sold in Berlin. So it shows that there's a huge amount of money being generated in the supply chain, and how does it work with the financial institutions? How is it possible that such a huge amount of money being just slicked within the legal financial markets, and why the repression is still in the production areas? So if you could just describe this for us, and thank you very much. I'll just say goodbye right now so that you can just use all time for you. Thank you very much. Thank you all, and thank you for all the audience. Janaina and Gabriel, thank you.
Okay, I'll try to be really fast then, because the thing is now when we recover a car, or when this car goes to be dismantled, this car is fruit of accidents or recovered by insurance companies. So the value of the car, it's already decreasing now. And then when they are recovered, the parts that are sold, they have a really high value in the market, because the price is made by the comparison between the price of a new part that, for example, is in a how is in English, concessionaria,
car shop, official car shop.
Official car shop, and then this is also the illegal part that is the price is really low. So the range of prices are different depending on the legality of the shops. So, but the thing is, when you sell the car, the entire car, a fruit of criminal activity or accident, the price is not that high anymore. It's not the full price. But then when you cut the car in several parts, then the price goes really up, because these parts, they are entirely functional, no? And so really gains earn value when they are scrapped.
Okay, Gabriel. Thank you, Janaina.
Yes, thanks, Luiz. So if we think that in Colombia, 1 gram of cocaine is $1, in Berlin, it's more than $100. And sometimes in Northern Europe, it would be $150 a gram. We are talking about much money. When it became something that some criminal organizations could regulate in large parts of this chain, it became very, very profitable. So I think as we saw, one stolen car in Brazil becomes $60,000, but we had in this year in Brazil 500,000 stolen cars. So it is not marginal in global economy anymore. I think cocaine changed the scale of illegal participation in global economies when it became part of the business of huge criminal organizations, as the PCC, as the CV, as the Mexican cartels and Colombian cartels and African criminal groups, and etc. And of course, it's going to change the global circulation of money in many different directions. If we read to Alpha City, Roland Atkinson book on the city of London, we see a lot of illegal money building the city of London. So we are not talking about marginal stuff anymore. We are really talking about something that is very important. Thank you very much. Sorry again for the mess in my presentation, but I'm very happy to be with you anyway.
No, it was great. Thank you all. Thank you very much. I'd like to thank you, Damian, Julian, Kurt from the organization. It was great to have you on board and very hard stuff. Thank you very much.
Thank you for listening to the OC24 podcast. For more talks, have a look at the podcast feed on whichever platform you use. There are loads more to listen to. Video versions of these talks are also available on the Global Initiative Against Transnational Organised Crime YouTube channel. If you would like to share these talks around, we ask that you use the hashtag OC24 and let us know what you think. The 24-hour conference on global organised crime is brought to you by the European Consortium of Political Research Standing Group on Organised Crime, the Centre for Information and Research on Organised Crime, the International Association for the Study of Organised Crime, and the Global Initiative Against Transnational Organised Crime. For more information, head over to oc24.globalinitiative.net. This has been the OC24 podcast from the Global Initiative Against Transnational Organised Crime. Thanks for listening.